So I'm finally here with my review of the Triumph Bobber Black. 8 months, 6,000 miles later, and it's about time that I got my humble, honest opinion out there of this machine. So please stay tuned for all of the good stuff and enjoy the video. I think it's quite funny how much the Triumph Bobber is essentially more of a speed twin than the speed twin itself. And what I mean by this is the characteristics. So if we rewind back to sort of 30s, 40s era Triumph and have a look at their speed twin, the Tiger 100, there are so many characteristics that shine through with its chassis, its seat, the rear mudguard, covers like for the terminals and components of the engine casing. It's a really beautiful throwback, and I think Triumph have done an amazing job of letting their heritage shine through in the present day bobber. And that's something I absolutely love about this bike, because something that's always drawn me to Triumph is their classic styling, their heritage, what the manufacturer means to motorcycle culture. I myself am a massive fan of the cafe racer scene. I love custom culture. I love scramblers, I love bobbers, choppers, and for me the modern classic range with the Triumphs like the T100, T120, Street Twin, they're all bikes that are great blank canvases for customizing. So I myself wanted a Triumph so I could customize it and make it my own. That was my goal, and I bought a T100 Black last year, and I bought this because I fell in love with the design, the simplicity, but I love the fact that it was a true Bonneville. I love the engine. I read great things about the liquid cooled parallel twin. I was a huge fan of the 270-degree firing order. That crank angle gives off such a lovely tone, and for me, the T100 Black had all the aesthetics, the paint job, the blacked out casing. It had everything I wanted in an affordable package. So I bought the T100 Black, and to cut a long story short, I had a great time with it. It enabled me to test out that engine. It gave me the confidence, and it enabled me to really expose myself in the world of the custom scene and start doing bits and pieces to the bike. As a newbie to my full license and my first big bike, I didn't go mental with it. I bought some bolt-on parts. I wrapped the pipes myself, ditched the cat, added an X pipe. I yellowed out the headlight, I added a scrambler grille, a brown seat. I did all these little things that weren't too complicated, but they were just a great way for me to experience that custom nature of making a bike your own. The best thing that I brought away from that was just how much I enjoyed that parallel twin motor. So I originally fell in love with the bobber before the T100 Black, and this is when Triumph initially started releasing promo pictures for the Triumph bobber. Now, the first picture I saw was of two bobbers side by side. So to the left you had the stock bobber, the drag bars, it had like a Morello cherry tank, and then to the right was a variant of the bobber but with 8 hangers, and it had this awesome little brown custom seat with what looked like a chopped rear fender, and to see it in a customized state was really cool. And I fell in love with it before I bought the T100, but again, it was about what I could financially afford, and I didn't want to dive in to a 1200cc engine with all that torque. I wanted to enjoy myself and just tinker around with a bike. So for me, the T100 was the perfect package. So I bought that at the time, but as time went on, throughout ownership of the T100, naturally Triumph then announced the Bobber Black. Now with the Bobber Black, I was instantly in love. It was love at first sight when I saw this bike, because it had everything that I originally wanted from the original bobber. It had the classic styling of the original bobber, but it was fused with that black paint job that I had from the T100. All the engine casing was blacked out, the pipes, the exhaust, the slash cuts. It was just wicked to see it in a blacked out form compared to the original bobber. And obviously there were other enhancements which made it even better for me. So to start with, you've got the 16-inch front tyre. So this matched the rear, which for me, I always envisioned the bobber having white walls, so having even tyre sizes for me was mint. And then you've obviously got dual discs up the front, you've got twin piston brakes, Brembo, compared to the single caliper, the single disc with the original bobber, and that was, I think they were Nissin brakes, not Brembo. So you've got more stopping power with this bike, because I think Triumph genuinely listened to consumers and they realised that the stopping power was quite lackluster with the original bobber. Not only that, you've got the 47mm shocks, so they're fatter, they're wider, they're meaner, and I think they give it this, you know, this statement look compared to the 41mm shocks of the original bobber. You know, it's chunkier, it's more aggressive, and that's exactly what I wanted from the bobber. LED front light as well. All these little things for me would just tick in every single box you could imagine. So without further ado, I booked in a test ride. So I didn't want to jump in like I did with the T100 and just go all in. I wanted to experience it for the first time, just in case it wasn't going to be what I thought it was. So I was quite apprehensive for the test ride because I knew the bike was quite heavy, I knew the seating position was quite different, and naturally it was the first time I'd test ridden a big bike. So I took it steady at first. I felt the weight distribution was nice, and I felt that the seating position was very comfortable at first. The angle of my legs, about an 80-degree angle, a bit similar to the T100. I liked that. I didn't want my feet to be forward like they are on, say, a Harley Davidson 40A. And all of this, I really felt at home with the bike. So I took it out, I blipped the throttle down the straight from the dealership, and I just realised how much this thing pulled like a train. So anyone out there that's ridden one, you will realise the torque is absolutely mental. I think it's 106 Newton meters. The way that the power is delivered, I mean, it's a 77 brake horsepower bike, so the engine wise it doesn't sound tremendous, but that tune with the bike, you know, even though it's got a 1200cc engine like the Thruxton, the fact that the horsepower, I think it's about 15 or 20 brake horsepower less than the Thruxton, and the torque is about, I think it's a bit less as well, but the way that it's just been designed is what makes the signature bobber tune for that engine. And I absolutely loved it. The gear change was wicked. I felt that the clutch itself was so smooth. I could change gears with a single finger. And the best part about the whole test ride was when I finally took it out into the countryside. I took it down some twisties and my jaw dropped. I realised how well this bike handled. I think anybody out there who's interested in riding a bobber, please take it out for a test ride. Don't just sit on it in the showroom. You will just be blown away by how well it handles. I was throwing it into corners, leaning over, coming out of corners like I was on a street bike. Like, it's just, you know, it's so forgiving, and compared to what I was initially expecting, I thought I was going to be scraping pegs, you know, I was quite concerned about it, but all of that, it all went away. Now, if that's not enough, I've actually got a clip here of Tim, that's TC and Thundercat, when he pulled up on my bobber after we'd just done a bike swap. This was a little while back, and just see for yourself his initial reaction when he pulled up and got off the bike.
Fucking awesome!
Yeah, boy! Did you have fun?
Shit, man.
Is it good?
Totally different.
It's totally different.
Totally different.
In what way? Obviously the sitting position.
Yeah, that's quite different to get used to. Fuck. It's like, it's an animal. It's so flickable.
It's crazy how light it is, isn't it?
Flickable. Like, way more than mine.
You think?
Yeah, way more.
Shit, man, that's crazy.
It's amazing. So cool.
So I fell in love with it. I accepted that compromise of comfort, and I went ahead and I part exchanged my T100 Black. Now, because I do like Harley Davidson and I do like the design of their Sportsters, for me, I felt like the Bobber Black was a crossbreed bike of a Sportster mixed with a Bonneville. Now, Personally, that was the perfect package. It's what I wanted. I wanted a Bonneville with all the heritage and the classic styling of what you would see on an old school bike, but I wanted it in a package that was very similar to a Sportster. You know, I wanted that sort of low down seat and that nice bobbed rear end, fat front tyre, that dragster sort of hot rod look, and it was something that nailed a lot of boxes for me, so I went for it. The bobber I came away with had apes fitted. Now, this was a big gamble, but I love the aesthetic from that very first promo pic I saw with the bobber on the right hand side with the apes, and I just wanted to go ahead and take the plunge and do it. So I had them fitted. I had the black leather quilted seat fitted, and I had the X-pipe removed from my T100 and put into my bobber black. Everything else was stock, and that is how I had it for a couple of months before I started changing parts on it. So through those few months of ownership, I was able to live with it day to day through extensive, cleaning, polishing, taking pictures, enjoying it. I could really absorb in the details and the lengths they went to design certain parts on the bike, and I was falling in love with it even more. So if we start from the front of the bike, we'll work our way back. One of the first things you'll notice is that from a distance it'll look like the bike has a carb, and that's because the throttle body and the TPS cover is all integrated with this sort of brushed steel panel, and it really does look like a carb. It doesn't look like a fuel pump, but that is what's hidden under there, the fuel pump, and I really like the way Triumph have integrated that. You move further down the bike and you'll see that, for example, the battery cover. So this is like a black box with this really plush brushed steel bracket, but all it is just a pop on and off cover just for the battery. These are the little things that I really like. You move further back and you'll see with the rear wheel that the hub in the middle, it almost looks like a drum brake, and I think that's the look they were going for. Admittedly, you've got a disc on there anyhow, but again, it's another little neat feature, and I love the fact that the whole chassis and the way the frame is designed with the monoshock hidden underneath the seat, it looks like a hardtail. And one of the best things about the Bonneville for me, the Bonneville Bobber, is the fact that they have engineered a bike with this old school style and look and these wonderful characteristics of bikes, a lot older, but it's in this modern package where you're getting the performance of a bike with all the mod cons that you would come to expect from a bike of this era, and that's what I love about it. So now the bars themselves, the drag bars, now I had the apes, so I didn't have the stock drag bars to begin with, but I did swap the apes out because I didn't get along with them, sadly. Turning circle and everything, it wasn't as a pleasurable experience as when I took the bike out for a test ride with the drag bars, and I kind of like that flat sort of hot rod dragster look with the drag bars, so I wanted to get them, sold the apes, got some drags, and I'll be honest, I would not go back. I think they're wicked, I love them. Seating position is a bit more of a compromise now. I still feel it in my back. It's a bit worse than the ape hangers. That was the one thing they did do. They alleviated that pain that I felt and discomfort, but I accepted this compromise. However, I did purchase some Motone up and over risers. Now, bar risers are something that if you look online, you will see that people recommend them for these reasons, not just for the aesthetics. I mean, I like what they look like. They do look like sort of Biltwell T-bars, but what they do is raise your bars by an inch and they bring them back an inch also. So they're an inch closer and an inch higher. This makes the world of difference with your seating position and your posture. I have found that it has helped me with longer rides, and I would highly recommend them if you're after some up and over risers. And it also enabled me to ditch that little faceplate with the Triumph branding, because there's too much Triumph branding over the bike, which sadly I'm not a fan of. So if you can get rid of something like that, yeah, it's a win. With that, obviously, you've got the controls, and I love the mod cons with this bike. As I mentioned, the fact that you have cruise control with a bike of this style is just wicked. You don't need it, but it's there. You don't need a rain mode, but it's there. Traction control, you don't need it, but it's there. They've thrown in all these parts, and I just think it's wicked, and that's why people should enjoy this bike for what it really is. And you move further down the bike, you'll probably find that the tank has a nice shape to it. It's a 9.1 litre tank. Now the fuel capacity is pretty naff, I'm not gonna lie, but again, I came in knowing this when I was doing my research, but you will find yourself probably filling up quite frequently. I have come down to like a mile left on my fuel gauge. You know, I've had some nice sort of turtling moments with the bobber. I would probably say you get an average of 95 to 100 miles out of a tank. It really depends how you ride it, but it's not that bad. You know, I can live with it. You know, I really like the fuel filler cap on this. I like how you can lock it. It's quite neat, although I probably will ditch this for a Motone filler cap, like billet aluminium in black. I think it would look really nice with a gloss tank. Moving further down the bike, obviously you've got the engine. So the engine is one of the key things with the liquid cooled parallel twin. I absolutely love the design of the parallel twin. I love those brushed fins. I love the shape of the, you know, the sprocket cover and how it runs along the side, the engine casing. It's just a beautiful design, the Bonneville. I love the 10,000 mile service interval. I think the 10,000 mile service interval is such a great peace of mind. Just goes to show how well manufactured and designed these Bonneville engines are. That's a win from me, a big thumbs up. I managed to throw on some things on this bike. I threw on some more Motone parts. I threw on a clutch badge on one side and the ACG cover on the other. Now they're both the black ribbed ones, because I love that rib look with like the fins of the actual engine and the block. I think just looks wicked. As you move further down the bike, you will notice that the frame that comes under the seat, it's quite blank and it's quite empty. Like, you will probably notice that on the stock seat and the seat pan, it sits quite high, like it's floating in the air a bit. Now in time, I really started to go off it. I didn't like it. I felt like there was too much of the rear end that was sort of moving about, and there was this hollow space, and it just looked odd to me. Maybe it was through seeing it all the time, I slowly went off it, I don't know. But I ended up ditching the stock seat, and I got a custom seat designed from LA Rosa Design in the States, and I wanted a stress brown look to match the tobacco brown grips that I had from Trip Machine Company with that leather. So I got this seat made and I'm super happy with it. One, because the aesthetic and just how badass it looks. Secondly, because of how low it sits. So as it's no longer like connected to the original seat pan, it is literally been designed with its own, you know, its own steel pan. It sits really low, and with that it eliminates that floating area that I disliked, and it kind of hides the monoshock a little bit more, and you're sitting a bit lower down, how I feel you would sit on this style of bike. And I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite upgrades that I've done to the bike, and I'm super happy with it. As you move further back down the bike, one of the key things that you will notice is that my rear end is completely different to stock. Now, something I've always hated across pretty much the liquid cool modern classic range with Triumph is their ugly rear end. It looks like, you know, what a TIE fighter would look like if it was manufactured in the Hinckley factory. It's just this horrible ugly unit with these big fat indicators and tail light, and just not a fan. So I wanted to expose that rear wheel and make it look nice, fat and chunky. So I ordered a Wonderkind rear fender kit. Now with this rear fender kit, not only did you get a cut down custom mudguard, but you also got multifunctional lights that were built into the struts. So I wanted something that looked slick and clean, and I wanted to get rid of all that junk, and I felt like this was perfect. So I got the mudguard in, it came in like raw steel. So I got that powder coated in gloss black, and I had all this fitted, and I'm just so happy with the end result because it's the exact look I was going for, and it's just removed all that bulk, which I think makes it look a little bit ugly. Purely depends on what you're going for, but this for me was spot on. This is how I always envisioned the bike. So, you know, 5 stars for this part from Wonderkind. I think it's wicked. Something with this bike which I think is wicked stock is the sound. So there's not many bikes out there that sound that great stock, but even without the cat, from when I took the Bobber Black for a test ride, I think the slash cuts sound really nice and throaty. I feel like if you're not too fussed about sound, it has a really nice tone for stock. But naturally I got my X-Pipe fitted and it sounds even better. I literally don't even feel like I need to add any aftermarket end cans, because I just love the sound. It just sounds beautiful when you're blasting down the rev range and really opening it up, and I get a lot of compliments from friends and people in the streets, which is great. I'll play a clip now of the sound. It might not be that great purely because of the camera I'm recording it with, but feel free to check out my other videos, especially the countryside cruising video, because you'll hear the tone of the exhaust really well in that video, so feel free to check that out. The Avon Cobra tyres on the Bobber Black are some of the nicest tyres I've actually ever ridden on. I feel like they grip well in the wet, despite not really riding much in the rain on the Bobber. I have done so and they performed really well, especially compared to the Pirelli Phantom Sports Comp that I had on my T100 Black. I do think they are pretty naff tyres. Despite looking okay, I just don't think they perform that well. But the Avon Cobras on the Bobber Black are really good, and that's why I got the white wall variant on my Bobber of that tyre, because I knew I could rely on them. So things that I dislike about the bike, I think for the price you pay, it's a bit naff that you have to fork out for a centre stand. So you don't get a centre stand with it, just a side stand, and I have to say with fitting bobbins and trying to get it on a paddock stand, it's a bit of a pain in the arse. I can't say it's the greatest of experiences, and I have dropped my Bobber and broken my front brake lever through trying to do this. I'd say either look out there for different stands that are made for the Bobber, or just get somebody else to help you with lifting it onto the stand. Another thing I dislike is probably the suspension. It's not that great. It could be better in my opinion, but again, you have to be grateful for the fact that they've included suspension in such a design that does look like a hardtail. So I guess I'm a little bit forgiving, but I probably will end up getting the Fox suspension down the line just to make that a bit better. I would say overall, the whole experience of the Bobber, coming from the T100 Black, experiencing the parallel twin in the 1200cc form, it's a wonderful engine. I honestly think they've smashed it out of the park with this bike, Triumph. It is a Marmite bike, some people do say this, and I get it, but please don't let the name Bobber put you off. I just think they're tremendous machines. So if you're out there and you feel like you might even be after a Harley Davidson, if you feel like a Sportster is sort of taking your fancy, but you love Triumph and the Bonneville range, honestly, I think this really could be the ideal crossbreed bike if you are a fan of both Triumph and Harley, because the characteristics from all their Sportster range and the Triumph Bonnie range are all merged together, and they make this lovely bike that is just the perfect package for me. So the question is it the perfect package for you? Well, only you can decide that, but just take one for a test ride just so you can see what it's all about, and I hope you enjoy the video. If you want more details about certain parts of the bike, feel free to message me. If you would love to see the modifications I've made to this bike in greater detail and you want another video, let me know, give me the feedback, and feel free to subscribe if you enjoy my content, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.